Trisha, a well-known girl at the school, notices Chris and believes she can seduce him in 2 days. Everyone, particularly the girls, is thrilled with their new English teacher in their first class. After the class, Chris becomes every girl's new crush, and Trisha immediately begins flirting with Chris. Kyla, on the other hand, goes to her usual hangout spot and sees Riley there. She introduces herself to Riley, and Riley shakes Kyla's hand. Kyla asks Riley if she can come over to her house for a study session because she sees it as an opportunity to be close to Chris. After that, we see Kyla becoming interested in Chris and taking more pictures of him. She reveals that Chris is her father. When Kyla returns home, she discovers that her mother is getting ready to go on a date with a man. She also notices that her mother has purchased a new dress for the date. At night, Kyla dreams of Chris and pleasures. The following day, she visits Riley's house and immediately begins asking Riley questions. Riley responds to questions about her father by revealing that her mother had been cheating on Chris, which led to a divorce and the couple moving to a new location. Kyla also tells Riley about her father, who left her when she was just 6 years old. Trisha is still trying to use her charm on Chris. She flirts with him, but Chris, being old-fashioned, doesn't notice. After class, Trisha goes to Riley and befriends her. Kyla sees them together and is jealous. Kyla heads straight to Chris's room when Riley goes to the bathroom. She warns Riley that Trisha is dangerous and is obsessed with Chris. Kyla explains that Trisha has a history of having affairs with teachers. The year before, she had sex with a history teacher, causing him to be replaced by another teacher for the entire year. Later that day, she informed Riley of this. When Kylie calls Riley, she learns that Riley will soon turn 18 years old. As a result, Kyla suggests that she host a birthday party at her house and that she will help her get as many people as possible to attend. She then shifts the conversation to Chris and asks about Chris's dating history. Kyla is unable to take her eyes off Chris, but she just can't watch her mother and Chris flirting and goes back to her room. When she discovers Chris is dating someone who turns out to be her own mother, she becomes envious of their flirting and sabotage their date. Chris is forced to spend the night with them because his clothes get filthy while they are eating dinner. She knows that her mother and Chris will pretend to be doing something to ruin their moment. Kyla acts scared and says that someone was watching her change in her room. She wants to be with her mother and Chris so they don't arrive late. Chris tells her that Riley is hanging out with Trisha despite her warning. The following morning, Chris offers to take Kyla to school because he is also going there after picking up Riley. While they wait for Riley to arrive, Kyla flirts with Chris and tells him that she is now an adult and can do anything in life. Riley then joins them and they head to school. Kyla confronts Riley at school about her going out with Trisha, despite Riley's warning that Trisha is using her to get to her father. Riley tells Kyla that Trisha claims Kyla herself was the one who had slept with their history teacher. Kyla denies the allegation and behaves rudely with Riley, forcing her to leave. Later, Kyla confronts Trisha and threatens her to avoid Riley, but Trisha doesn't care and doesn't back down. That night, Kyla also takes pictures of herself in private poses. Kyla finds the pictures she took the night before in her locker the next day. She immediately goes to Chris, who assures her that he will find the person responsible. Riley sees the pictures and leaves them alone. After that, Kyla and Riley make amends and apologize to each other. In addition, Kyla confesses that she was the one who slept with the history teacher, claiming that she was being manipulated. Now that Kyla's mother is getting ready to meet Chris, Kyla looks at Chris's phone while he's in the bathroom and finds private, suggestive messages from Trisha. After reading the notes, Kyla's mother asserts that Chris is manipulating his students. Kyla, on the other hand, is enjoying the situation because her mother is finally out of her way. She then heads over to Chris, who is sitting in his truck pondering what really happened. Kyla enters and begins to seduce Chris. She succeeds in seducing him and kisses him passionately. Chris cannot resist Kyla any longer and gives in to Kyla. Chris is then dumped by her mother, who asks him to go. Finally got what she wanted, and she's very happy about it. However, it turns out that Kyla, posing as Trisha, was the one who sent Chris those messages. The following day, Chris is completely lost in class, and Trisha is still trying to flirt with Chris, but Kyla interrupts her. Meanwhile, the police show up at the class and take Trisha away because they find her. The phone that Chris used to send text messages on, as well as pictures of Kyla from her locker. Later that night, Kyla goes to the party and gives her some presents. She then goes straight to Chris's room and starts seducing him. Chris continues to resist Kyla's advances, but eventually gives in and they start having a sexual relationship. Chris tries to stop her, but it's too late and there is no going back. Chris decides to go after her but is stopped by Kyla, who lies to him that Riley is addicted to alcohol. He ignores Kyla and heads out to find Riley. Riley walks in and sees them together as they are about to hook up. She is disgusted by the scene and runs away. Chris tries to make amends with Riley the following morning, but Riley is not in the mood. After the class, Kyla's mother confronts Chris and slaps him. She then takes Kyla away and leaves. Kyla tells her mother that she is of legal age and can love anyone. She wants Chris and even says she and Chris are in love. Riley confronts Chris and wants to know why he did it. Chris apologizes to Riley for everything and says he won't see Kyla again. The next day, Kyla calls Trisha and asks to meet her before school. When Trisha arrives, Kyla admits she was framed and starts hitting her. Kyla cries out for help, claiming Trisha attacked her. As Riley and Chris arrive, then Trisha is detained by the police and Kyla goes to the hospital. Riley and Chris also go to the hospital. When Riley tells Kyla that her relationship with her father is over, Kyla seems to agree. She then asks Riley to take over her yearbook duties for a basketball game that night because she hurt her hand, which Riley does. After Riley leaves, Kyla also asks Riley if she can speak with her father one last time. After Riley leaves, Kyla tells Chris that they can finally be together now that Trisha is gone, but Chris tells her that their relationship is over and that she should leave him alone. Chris decides to quit his job to get away from Kyla, leaving to gather his belongings from the classroom. Kyla takes a scalpel from the hospital and flees at the school. Chris wants to further grow his relationship with Kyla, declares she will never leave him and reminds him he will have to see her every day in class. Kyla confronts Riley, tells her that only one of them can be in Chris's life, and then stabs Riley in the stomach. She then walks over to Chris's class, holds a scalpel to his throat, and tells him that they were meant to be together. Kyla then reveals that she was the one who manipulated Chris's previous teacher, not the other way around. A janitor hears the commotion and stumbles upon Kyla, who pretends to be injured and asks him to get help. Riley, who is still alive, tries to get help from Chris, who manages to push Kyle off of him. Chris falls unconscious after hitting his head on the table. Kyla then attacks Chris and attacks Chris again. As the janitor tries to get help, Riley tells him to run, but Kyla finds him and kills him. As a result, the two engage in a fight, with Riley eventually defeating Kyla. The police take them both away in separate ambulances, but Riley is shocked to learn that Kyla is still alive. Several months later, Chris and Riley have moved to a new location, and Chris is prepared to take up the janitor's position. A new teaching position, and Riley is looking forward to her first day at college. However, as Riley drives off to college, we see a hooded figure, which we can assume to be Kyla, come out of hiding, indicating that she is still slavishly following Chris.